If you Google quotes about running, like I did to write this intro, you'll find quotes about getting out what you put in, strength through pain, perseverance, joy in the journey, and finding clarity. And while none of them were quite what I was looking for, in a way they were all appropriate to describe today's guest's journey.
The timing just seemed to be right. My kids were a little bit older. I was in the pediatric transplant role. My job was very supportive. We could take the time off. And then I just decided, but this is the time. I feel like this feels right to me right now.
That's Haley Sarff-DeLong, daughter, pediatric transplant coordinator, and living kidney donor. I'm Sarah Jane Castro, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications for the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois, and your host for this edition of The Journey Continues. Welcome, Haley. Can you start by telling us what your family connection to kidney disease is?
So about 9 years ago now, my dad was diagnosed with end-stage kidney disease and started dialysis. He had some health issues prior to this, so was kind of in and out of the hospital, had some heart issues, but end-stage kidney disease was really devastating to him, and he started dialysis at that point. And in about 3 to 4 months after being on dialysis, he was just having other health issues, and dialysis made him feel terrible. His heart wasn't getting any better, and so with our family and with the social work at the hospital, we had like a family meeting and ultimately came to the decision, or he did, that he would stop dialysis. And then he ultimately passed away about 4 to 5 days after he stopped dialysis.
That had to be a really hard decision to make.
Yes. I think at the time when we found out that he had made that decision, we all respected it. We knew that the last year, a little bit, year and a half of his health journey was really difficult for him. I had just had my first son and his first grandchild, who he was obsessed with. And I knew, it was not obviously the plan for him to pass away when he was 6 months old. But we respected it. We knew that he thought a lot about this decision. We didn't question it. We really kind of just looked at it as, okay, this is what's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. Let's just spend as much time together as we can and do fun stuff for the last few days that we had together.
Yeah, you're kind of looking at that like quality of life versus the number of days.
Absolutely. Yep.
What did you and your family know about kidney disease before your dad got that diagnosis?
I knew a little bit about it. My mom and my parents are divorced, but my mom was a dialysis nurse pretty much her entire nursing career. So when I was a kid, I heard a lot about dialysis type stuff, not enough to really understand it. I did know that, it was a continuum, and once you got to end stage, you were either transplant dependent or you were dialysis dependent. I did know that dialysis was really tough. It wasn't really, it didn't provide patients a good quality of life. It kept them alive, but dialysis 3 to 4 times a week, the runs are 3 to 4 hours. They make you feel tired. So I knew that was not a good quality of life that people had on dialysis. I knew at that time that there was a lot of people on the waiting list, and that people, thousands of people die every year without getting a transplant. So I was aware of that, but nothing personal. We don't have a history of kidney disease in my family, so it was really just what I've heard in snippets and, what I learned when my dad was diagnosed.
When your dad got the diagnosis of end-stage renal and started dialysis, was it a possibility for him to get worked up for transplant?
Initially, we thought so, but through the evaluation process, it was determined that his heart wasn't healthy enough, his lungs weren't healthy enough. So I think my older brother and I had talked about it with each other, like, okay, if this is a possibility, one of us, we will try to donate. And then we found out fairly quickly that it just wasn't a possibility for him.
How did his illness and an ultimate death affect your career path?
When he passed away, I was just finishing up nursing school. And I knew that I was going to take a pediatric path. I knew I was going to work with kids. There was just no other option. And at the time, I was actually more interested in oncology. So his passing didn't really get me into the transplant realm yet. It was really just working with the patients once I got on a unit at the University of Minnesota. Once I got on that unit and started working with pediatric transplant patients is when I really went into that realm of the specialty.
Okay. Do you think your mom being a dialysis nurse had any impact on your decision?
Probably. I mean, it's kind of the same realm, right? We're both working with patients with end-stage kidney disease, probably. I've always thought transplant was very fascinating. I've always thought it was amazing that you can take an organ from one person and put it to somebody else and they can live and thrive. So I've always thought it was very interesting. And to be honest, before my job now and before becoming a bedside nurse with kidney transplant patients and liver transplant patients, I didn't really think that kids got transplants that often. I was, thought it was more of an adult issue. So once I got into that role and I saw, oh, there's a lot of kids, of course, in this field that I'm in, that get transplanted, that's kind of where I gained more of that knowledge.
How common is that for children to get transplants?
To me, it's kind of, I think I'm biased a little bit in my answer because to me, that's all I deal with all the time is kidney transplant patients. I mean, every year at the university, it just depends each year. I think our largest year for liver transplants was maybe 2023. I think we did between 17 and 20 per year. Kidneys, I think so far this year we have done, I'm just trying to think of myself, probably about 10.
So definitely more common than you would think. So you're a pediatric transplant coordinator now. What does that entail?
Yeah, so each center has their own kind of setup for it. At the University of Minnesota, there's 3 of us. So myself and 2 other RNs that do post-transplant care. So basically, we are assigned a patient based on their last name. And once they leave the hospital, we do teaching with them, make sure that they're prepared to leave the hospital. Their life is going to be different. It's a new normal is what we like to call it. We do teaching and make sure that they know, there's a lot to know as much as they can about transplant before they leave the hospital. Then once they're out, we manage their meds, we manage their labs, constantly checking for rejection or monitoring for rejection or infection. Just make sure that they're doing the best that they can do after transplant.
What are some of those things they should know before they go home?
Well, they need to know their medications. They are going to be on immune suppression meds the rest of their life. So they will always have a higher risk of infection and higher risk of being sick. And so they need to monitor for that. Their other child may have a fever and they're like, okay, let's do some Tylenol and monitor it and keep them at home. But if their transplant child gets a fever, it's a whole different story. They can get sick really fast. And they, that first year they have to come back into the emergency department and get a full workup. They're admitted, antibiotics, that kind of thing. They need to monitor for signs for rejection. For us, the go-to for that is blood work. They need blood work 2 to 3 times a week, always in the morning because it's a timed one for one of their medications. So anytime, let's say for a kidney transplant patient, anytime there's a little bump in where their baseline creatinine is, they're going to be getting worked up potentially for a biopsy, checking for rejection.
Kids just in school without health issues come home with colds and all sorts of germs all the time. So I imagine when you're immunocompromised and you're on these anti-rejection drugs, you've got to be really, really careful about sending your child to school when the sniffles are going around.
Absolutely. And COVID was, exceptionally hard too for patients. We tell them not to go to school for the first few months. It's really just to get their immune system a little bit stronger. They're not on such higher doses of immune suppression, but they're always at risk of getting sicker, symptoms lasting longer, ending up being admitted in the hospital for a few days.
That's got to be hard for those kids to maintain normalcy and feel like a kid when they're dealing with such serious things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions across the board with transplant is if a patient, a young child's on dialysis, their quality of life is not great, but then they get transplanted and we have a big celebration. It's a big deal when they get transplanted. But then people think the hard work is over, and it's really just kind of begun in terms of monitoring their labs, making sure they don't get sick. They're going to still feel kind of crummy, recovering from surgery. They're required to come to all these appointments. So their life is still disrupted. It's a new normal for them, but there's still challenges that first year and beyond. So it's really not smooth sailing after transplant, unfortunately.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. What do you like best about your job?
The patients, hands down the patients. Yeah, they are, incredible, really. They're so brave. They're so resilient. Kids in general are just so resilient. I have a patient who is going to get a biopsy next week, and we were in clinic with her last week. And, she's had a tough course post-transplant. And she has to go in for another biopsy, and she's in there smiling and chatting with us and laughing and, just, what, she's not happy about it, but
Right.
still playing and laughing and being silly with us. And she's just going through so much, but kids just seem to handle it a little bit better than
Yeah.
adults do. But then also seeing patients who pre-transplant who are not doing well, and we're just waiting to get to transplant. We're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then we do. And we go through the hard stuff of the first few months after transplant. And then to see them thriving is wonderful. It's amazing to be part of that journey with them and getting to know the family and the parents and being a part of the kid's life and seeing them do so well is amazing.
That's got to feel good to see. You get to follow their progress
Yes,
throughout the journey
yes.
and see how they grow and develop and grow into adults who are now, responsible for this transplant, and they understand probably so much more than their peers.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. I mean, we have a lot of patients who say, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a kidney doctor, or I'm going to be a kidney nurse, because they're so well versed in it. But
Yeah.
they've built this bond with the caregivers that they have, and they're like, I want to do that same thing. So that's always fun to hear.
Yeah, that's got to feel great. When did you decide to donate your own kidney?
Well, I had been thinking about it, ever since the thought of donating to my dad came up. It's kind of been something in the back of my mind that I've always been, well, if somebody I know needs a kidney, I hands down, I'll sign up and see if I'm a match. So I kind of just put that out there and like, that would be, interesting to do that. And over the years, it kept kind of in the back of my mind, something like, I wonder if I get to do, if I'll be able to do that someday, or not be able to do that, but if the opportunity presents itself. And then, I graduated nursing school. I had another baby. Life got a little bit busy. And then when I started at the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospitals, when I started taking care bedside of patients post-transplant, is when I started to really think about it again. I mean, it was like a 5-year process between me deciding that I was going to do it to when I actually did it. And then the timing just seemed to be right. My kids were a little bit older. I was in the pediatric transplant role at that time. My job was very supportive. I could have, we could take the time off. And then I just decided, well, this is the time. I feel like this feels right to me right now. So that is when I submitted to have the evaluation.
Sounds like you put a lot of careful thought into it and thought about how you could take care of yourself and your family and your patients in the best way, and the timing and all of that worked beautifully. Did you have a recipient in mind?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. Nope.
So you just went altruistic with it.
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
What did your family think about your plan?
My husband knew that I had always thought about it. So when I finally pulled the trigger, he was like, yeah, okay, of course. Like, he wasn't surprised.
Mm-hmm.
He supported me and said, whatever you need me to do, I'm 100% on board. My brothers, I have 2 brothers, they both were like, yeah, of course you're going to do this. Like, that's not surprising that you would, do something like that. Everybody was really supportive. I didn't get anybody that questioned it, to be honest with you.
That's great.
Yeah.
How did the process differ being on the patient side of things, or the donor side of things versus the coordinator side of things?
Well, I really had to just kind of let go. When I'm obviously the transplant coordinator, and I take care of a patient, I have a lot of responsibility. I have a lot of things to do with it. But when I was on the other side, being the donor, I kind of just followed what my provider told me to do, followed the coordinator, and kind of just had no control with it and just trusted the process.
Was that freeing, or did that feel kind of nervous, anxiety making?
It was freeing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in a really good, I thought about it for such a long time that when I went into it, it felt right. So I wasn't, I didn't have any anxiety with it.
What, if anything, do you know about your recipient? Have you met? Have you talked to them?
I have not. I do know that it went to a female, a woman here at the University of Minnesota. And the only information I was told after the fact was that the kidney was working and the patient was producing urine. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all I knew. Yep.
That's the result everybody wants.
Right.
To hear.
Yeah.
Has anything in your routine changed since you donated your kidney, health-wise, or just with how you operate in the world?
No. I joke with people, the only thing that's changed is I can't take ibuprofen like I want to. But nothing really has changed, to be honest with you. I do the same exact things that I did before transplant.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Do you have to get regular checkups to make sure your kidney function is okay?
Yeah, you do have to get blood work. It's a little bit more frequent after you donate. But right now I'm doing every 6 months.
Okay.
And they just put the orders in. I go into lab, get my blood work, and in and out. It's pretty easy.
That's great. And they just call you if there's anything to note?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How long have you been a runner?
Since I was like 25, so 15 years.
Okay. What do you love about running?
Running is, therapy for me, honestly. It's freeing. I love being outside. I'm not the one that's on the treadmill doing my runs. I have to be outside. I love being out in nature, being by myself. It's time for me to think, be appreciative. Like I said, it's very therapeutic.
Yeah.
For me.
Were you concerned that donating your kidney would affect your marathon training?
I did. I didn't really know what to expect after donation. I was worried, like, would I be able to get back into the same routine that I was previously? And I just listened to my body and took it day by day and slowed down when I needed to slow down and take breaks when I needed to take breaks. And eventually I got back to the full swing of things.
So you ran the Chicago Marathon for Team Kidney, but that wasn't your first marathon, correct?
No, this was my 6th marathon with Team Kidney. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What did it feel like to run with that bright orange jersey and the kidney on your chest?
It was awesome. I loved it. I had such a great time. I had never been on a charity team before, and it was such a rewarding experience being on a team, getting to know the other runners on my team, but then also to raise money for the National Kidney Foundation and then wear that jersey with pride on, or my bib was really awesome. And having people yell, "Go Team Kidney," as you pass them was really great. Yeah, it was an honor really to be able to do that.
I love that. I find the marathon so emotional. I've never run it, never even gotten close to running that far, but every time I stand on the sidelines and watch, my eyes are welled up with tears because it's so incredible to see people doing this amazing feat physically at all, but then to see all of the reasons why they're running. I absolutely love.
No, I'm absolutely the same way. My daughter and I went and watched the Twin Cities Marathon the weekend before. It's right by our house, so we just went out and I was watching people and they saw their family on the side and they're hugging each other as they keep going. And I had like tears in my eyes and my daughter says, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, you're proud of them. They've worked so hard and it's amazing to see people accomplish something that they worked so hard at. So I'm definitely that same person that gets teared up when I see people, strangers, accomplish goals that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it's for something that's so personal.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And you have this really unique perspective as a family member, a nurse, and now a living donor. Do you think that perspective has given you maybe better insight into how your patients are cared for or how you approach your patient care?
Definitely. I think so. I know the type of quality of life that they have when they're on dialysis or when they're dealing with end stage. I also think being a parent too, when you work in pediatrics, they say you're not only caring for the patient, but you're also caring for the parents as well. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a really good insight into how they're feeling when their child is going through this, and if it's sudden and how scary they are, how scary it must be, and just seeing their child having all these health issues and not feeling great. So it does give you that perspective of really understanding and trying to understand more where the family is coming from and where the patient's coming from.
Well, I think you're being able to put yourself in the shoes of the family member and see, like, you've been there. You've seen someone you love very much go through this process and experience some of these challenges and setbacks and pain. And so it probably makes the empathy you already have as a nurse just that much stronger because you've been in that situation. I'm sure that's comforting to the parents of your patients.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, even though it's a child and things are different, but you completely understand, not completely understand, but you get an idea of what they're going through. And just being part of that process with the family from the beginning too, you go through that journey with them. So the more times you do that, the more awareness you get. And I like it when my families are upfront with me of how they're feeling. I want them to share how they're doing. When we do our visits with them or I'm on the phone with them, it's also to check on how the patient's doing medically, but also how are they doing emotionally? How is the family doing emotionally? How can we support you beyond the medical aspect of stuff? So it is definitely, it gives me insight. I get that insight as well, just from having a family member go through dialysis.
I think that's such a meaningful part of the care, is not just the labs and the medication and all of that, but like, how are you handling this emotionally? How are you doing? I think that's so important to ask. For families like yours or your patients who have someone they love very dearly in need of a kidney, what advice do you have for them to take care of themselves in that way?
We don't always get this, but having a good support system is going to be really helpful. Having other family members help out. If there's other kids involved, the parent's going to be taking their child to lots of visits. And so having another caregiver or another support system that helps them is really important. And then utilizing your resources, talking to the social worker, talking to the nephrologist, talking to your coordinator, anything that we can do to help out, we will. Try to find time for yourself. It's really tough to do that. And we all talk about self-care. We all do that. But we want parents to be able to take care of themselves, or caregivers to be able to take care of themselves so they can fully be present. And they can't do that when they're not sleeping and they're burnt out. They're not eating well. They're spending days and days and days at the hospital. You can tell the parents just need a little bit of a break. They need a little bit of a reset. So just try to, take care of yourself the best that you can. If you can, we have some families will have an aunt or an uncle or a family member come stay so that the family member can, the mom or dad, or can get a little bit of, go get their nails done, go do something really basic like that. Find that self-care a little bit.
It's a hard thing sometimes to ask for help or to ask someone to come in and just sit with your child while you go get your hair cut or whatever. I imagine letting go of that control is very anxiety making, and like leaving your child, someone you even trust, but like even leaving for a minute would probably feel very difficult to do, but it is so important so that you can be regenerated and refilled and be ready.
We do have some parents who haven't had, and even after transplant, who haven't had a vacation in years because they're afraid to leave. And, we talk a lot about afterwards of kind of having this post-traumatic stress from the whole process. And it is very real. It's very true. Even patients who are worked up as a young child, even when they're teenagers, there is still medical stuff that lingers with them, or trauma that lingers with them. So there's a huge emotional impact of needing a transplant, being on dialysis, that stays with them, even if they're doing well. So we always recommend therapy afterwards, or at least talking to somebody, having a good support system, because it's definitely taxing emotionally.
What advice do you have for other runners or athletes to encourage them to become living donors?
I mean, the only thing I really can say is that your life, if you go into it being healthy, you can expect a full recovery and expect to just live your life how you were before you donated.
I think that's great. And that's like incredible to me when I first got into the kidney world and started learning about living donors, and how I think just about every living donor I've spoken to has said, yeah, everything's normal. It's my life is just the same.
Yeah.
That's so amazing to me. Do you think your kids are paying attention to these types of things and they know about kidney health and organ donation and all of that now?
Yeah. Yes, probably too much. I mean, my 10-year-old is volunteering with me tomorrow at the National Kidney Foundation for Kidney Day in Minnesota. So he's going with me, and we're going to hand out T-shirts and water bottles. My daughter has a kidney stuffed animal. I've been very transparent with them from the get-go, explaining it to them the best that I can. So they probably know more about kidney health than some adults.
Probably,
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they understand what transplant is. They understand that kids get transplants, talk about it often. They do know that my kidney is living in a stranger And that my kidney is keeping that person off of, hopefully, I don't know right now, off of dialysis, and hopefully they're living thriving and living a good life because of that. So they're very much aware. Yes.
Which of your accomplishments do you think your dad would be most proud of?
Oh gosh, probably donating a kidney to a stranger. He loved watching me run, and he would come to races. Him and my stepmom would come and, cheer me on. And he actually came to one of my half marathons a few days before he passed away. So he always thought that was really cool. He always just thought it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you could run that distance. Like, that's crazy. And he was always really proud of that. I think on top of donating an organ to a stranger, probably being a mom, and raising my 2 little kids, he would be incredibly proud of the mom that I am.
It sounds like he was really loving being a grandfather, even just for the short amount of time he got to experience that.
He, was going through some health stuff when my son Myron was born. And so bringing Myron over was kind of like a nice relief from that, a nice distraction from that. He was on oxygen at that point, and Myron would come over and play with his oxygen tubing and giggle and laugh. And we all thought that was really funny. It was just such a nice, he was just such a nice distraction at that point, but he just loved seeing him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. Well, thank you, Haley, so much. Do you have anything else to share with our listeners that you want them to know about anything? Running, kidney health, being a family member?
Yes. So one thing that came up recently with my kidney donation is I was at one of my kids' sporting events, and a parent came up to me and said, I just found out that you donated your kidney to somebody, and I had no idea that that was possible. I didn't know that you could donate a kidney to somebody else and you could still live a normal life. And I think naively, because of the career that I'm in and my family history, I thought, how do you not know about kidney donation? But it is a very good point and very true that there is so many healthy people who have no idea that you can donate an organ, A, donate it to a stranger, B, but live a normal, healthy life afterwards. So I thought, well, how many people, if more people knew that, would more people come forward? If more people knew what kidney donation looked like, would more people come forward to donate? And not just to a loved one or not just a paired exchange, but to a stranger. I thought about that, and I just think spreading the word or spreading the message that you can donate, be a non-directed donor, give it to somebody who desperately needs it, change their life forever, and you have a few weeks of recovery, and ultimately you go back to your normal life. So I just thought that was interesting. I just hope we can spread the word and people can get more familiar with kidney donation.
There's no better endorsement than that. You've just completed your 6th marathon, and
right.
It's like no big deal. Just
right,
a couple weeks of recovery and just
yeah. You have scars on your stomach, but then you're like, oh, okay. There's really no change in your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing.
So, and then you get that rewarding feeling of knowing that there's somebody out there that is now hopefully living life to the fullest and being able to do all the things that they wanted to do. And, whether it's a kid and they're able to go to school and do the normal sports stuff, or if it's a grandparent, being able to spend time with their grandkids, or a parent being able to be off of dialysis. So that is just an incredibly rewarding feeling.
Thank you so much, Haley, again, for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate all of the perspectives you bring and all the ways that you've loved people with kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, and the ways you continue to care for them.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been wonderful.
If you'd like to learn more about becoming a living donor or running with Team Kidney, visit the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois website at nkfi.org. I'm Sarah Jane Castro, and this is The Journey Continues. Prevention is a key part of our mission at NKFI. That's why at the end of each episode, we offer a health or nutrition tip.
Here's today's nutrition tip about fluid and hydration. Drinking enough water every day has a big impact on your health. It can prevent dehydration, help with maintaining your body temperature, allow for regular bowel movements, and help to prevent kidney stones. Water and proper hydration are necessary to lubricate and cushion your joints, protect your spinal cord and other sensitive body tissues, and help to rid your body of waste through urine, perspiration, and bowel movements. A common question is, how much water should I drink in a day? That answer varies by person and health condition and is best answered by your healthcare provider. But in general, you want to make sure you are drinking enough water to produce urine that is a light color. Darker urine may indicate that you are not drinking enough. While water is the drink of choice, other beverages such as tea, coffee, and milk can also keep you hydrated. Don't forget that some of the foods we eat have a higher water content and can help you meet your fluid needs. These foods include soup, fruits, and vegetables. Wondering how you can drink more water in a day? Try a few of these tips. Carry a water bottle with you and refill it throughout the day. Freeze water in a freezer-safe water bottle. Take one with you and then it'll thaw and you have water all day long. Choose water over sugary drinks. Opt for water when you're eating out. Serve water during meals and add a wedge of lime or lemon to your water to enhance the flavor of water and help you drink more water than you're used to. With today's nutrition tip, I'm Melissa Prest, a registered dietitian nutritionist